Hello, this is Gene. I'm back in Florida after being in Alabama for a week. I have to say that I pussied out. I left Dorian because I thought Dorian was going to do what they did in the Bahamas. So I left, shut up my house, put the shutters up, helped up by the older people behind us or next to us, and nothing really happened here. But good Lord, people in the Bahamas, I don't know what to say, man. Hopefully, something comes out of this. It's horrible. It's one of those things you wonder. Every couple of years now, it looks like this is going to happen. And whether you believe in climate change or not, something's happening. The storms are getting stronger. I don't necessarily believe everything about climate change, but clearly, I mean, the water's more warm. It is what it is. So I'll stop. I don't want to talk about that in this video. For the last 6, 7 weeks, after somebody commented on one of my videos or Twitter or something, and I started thinking about what he said, and then the last 4 or 5 days, and Monday Night Football, I decided I want to talk about this subject again. And I talk about it a couple times on my channel about why there are not a lot of white young boys that are playing football at the college level. And if you don't play college level, you don't go to the NFL. And you continually see this. And it pretty much hit the head when I was watching the pregame before the game on Monday night. Excuse me, it was Thursday night between Green Bay and the Bears. The commercials leading up to the performances by, I forget who they were. I know who they are. Black Eyed Peas, I think they were. Is basically a show geared to black people, and then we saw them perform, and everybody in the audience was basically black. Now, clearly, it's southern part of Chicago, and that's predominantly a black area. But it's been pushed this way, and it probably should be because 70% of the players in the NFL are black, and this is a trend that's not going to change. And there's a reason why it's happening. And I've talked, small issues I've talked about at different times on my different channels about why I think that's happening. But it kind of like it all comes back to the same thing. I think that young boys, white boys, are not motivated to play football. I think that the mothers are worried about brain injuries, and the fact that they don't have strong fathers in the home, and it's not looked at as a way to get out of the system or whatever. So their motivation is not there. I talked about the obstacles that a white kid might have when he's going against, right now anyway. It was 40 years ago, it was the other way, but it was a different thing. It was about racial issues. Now this is more about you're being judged because you happen to be white, and they think that, oh my God, you can't jump like the movie White Men Don't Jump. There's this prevailing idea that black players are so much better throughout their entire career than white players. And I've said many times on this channel that I think there is a different level of athleticism that they have for these certain type sports. But motivation, brain power, just doing the right thing, keep you at the same level. And at some point, you could surpass people who have, quote unquote, more athletic than you are. But there's something more going on here, and it's clear to me that when a young white boy goes out and he's rejected, and he sees 80% of the team is going to be black, that he realizes throughout his life that he's always going to find that. And whether he doesn't have enough people at home that says, you got to go back and keep trying, regardless of them saying you're not good enough, do what you need to do in the off season and go back and show everybody you're better. You're not really seeing that anymore in the white community. So this is not really racial when it comes to it. It says that we're not doing enough in the white community to have more white players. But there's also this idea when you're recruiting somebody and you're saying, I want to get the guy that's most athletic as you can, and I can change all the other stuff. I can treat the other issues with it. His behavior might be not good or whatever, that we can fix that. But he has the athletic ability, so we're going to just try to change that or train that to the next level. And when coaches see that, or people are recruiting, they will take a chance with somebody like that. And meanwhile, maybe the white guy who does a 4.6 when it comes to the 40s instead of a 4.4, or doesn't jump as high, they keep them off to the side. And at some point, a lot of guys, they can't deal with the rejection, and they do something else, and they're pushed also to say do something that is not that safe, or is safer than football, and so you see that happening as well. But it's kind of like all came to a head for me, because I've been saying for a while, because it's one of those things that says that if there was a decent amount of white players, you would see an interesting thing on TV. It's one of those years that we always hear the same thing, usually from the minorities. It says, I want someone who looks like me to be in those type of positions. They were first talking about being football players, but now they want to be in management, or they want to be running universities or all that type of thing. But you're not really white players. I mean, or young boys, who are they going to look at other than maybe some quarterbacks in college? And the game's changed so much at the college level. And you see this thing on ESPN talking about the year of the black quarterback. Well, the games at the college level has changed so much because the only people that they're recruiting are basically black. Obviously you do have white players, but it's not the same level. You just have so much more. Anyway, so I was watching Florida State against Boise State. So you got a team that's basically 90% black. That's Florida State, and they've been that for a little while. Last 15 years it's become more and more relevant that it's going to be that way, and now they got a black coach, and apparently that's a recruiting tool. I mean, obviously when he was hired, the guys came back from the old Florida State teams and came back and were all supported because he was black. Fair enough. To say it, would it be the same the other way? Probably not, but just continually on with that. And that's the way it was going. And obviously the local high schools are basically black. So it's not out of the realm of, whatever. And then you got Boise, who's from a white state, but they still recruit players from California that are white or black. But their recruiting is clearly different than Florida State. Florida State in the last 15 years has been the top 10 when it comes to recruiting, based on these people who make these assessments based on that. You're a 4 or 5 star recruit. Then you got Boise State, who has very few. Now their quarterback was one of their highest ones ever. They happen to be white. But let's say that they're 80% or 75% white. First part of that game, it seemed that the athletic ability was clearly on one side, even though that Boise State was pushing the ball down the field against Florida State all the time and just selling for field goals, and a couple times Florida State got some turnovers. So at 2 times in that game, Florida State was up by 18 points and had great explosive type plays that got them touchdowns. But you go to halftime, and clearly they took some changes at halftime. And you can talk about this. I don't want to go here with this, but I'm going to kind of go there. He had a black coach who didn't make any changes to his game. He had a white office and coordinator for offense, so I can't really say that. And then you had Boise State, who made some changes. In the second half, Boise State basically manhandled this team that has more recruits, comparatively better athletically. And then you see them together, and you're like, who's really more athletic? And I've said this now for about 5 years when it comes to Florida State. They don't look like they're better athletically than anybody else. And I think that the thing is that there is no, Florida itself is not the greatest place for athletes anymore, because people can go inside and they can train. And since you're being born in Florida doesn't make you a better athletic person if you're made in Iowa. If you have the places around you and you can train against people the same level as you and you continually get better, that's what helps. And that's why I think there's more of that in college football. So you see more upsets than you would see. Now, I'm just saying, if they're walking down the street together, the entire team, there's no athletic difference. They're not bigger or stronger. They just look like one team that died at the end of the second half. So what upset me about this, instead of them saying that Boise State deserved that win, that they were the better team and they out physically and athletically beat Florida State, they're just saying because Taggart came out and said that they weren't hydrated right. And of course he backed that up, or he walked that back. the point is they were pushed the entire game by a quote unquote predominantly white team. And when I see stuff like that, I don't want to say that I feel good about it because I'm a Florida State fan. I didn't want them to lose. I was upset the entire game. So, but it comes back to the same thing that says if you're a white boy and you don't see anybody that looks like you, what gives you the motivation to go out there and play to look like something like that? Now, the way that society has changed so much, and being black and being an athlete who's black is considered one of the highest things in the world, that a lot of young boys that are white will aspire to be somebody like that. I mean, if you're an 8 or 9-year-old guy, you might look at, or a 10-year-old girl, a boy, might look at Cam Newton and say he's great, or any of the great other players in the NFL who happen to be black. You might look at that and you don't really care about that. Maybe that makes white people that way as important to other. But that's just, we don't push it. We don't sit there and say you need to look like, like them, like the other communities do that as well. We don't do it. But that awakening may change. And when you continue, when the biggest part of college football is going to be dominated by black players, and then when the NFL comes in and takes the players there and they stream that down, and most of those are going to come out are going to be black, there's going to be a point that we're going to say, why am I watching this? Nobody looks like me. I won't even tell my son to even try to be that, even if he works out. I mean, you're never going to be like that because all these movies say that guys can't jump if they're white. And the media continually pushes that. And at the same thing, we have people like Janelle Harris, I think her name, used to be ESPN. She's a racist in chief. She's said that black players shouldn't go to quote unquote white universities. And I'm like, oh, you want them to go to like Grambling or Florida A&M? Well, they'll never go the, well, maybe it'll be changed. Well, if you want to segregate it that way, and then you'll have a black national champion and a white or other color national champions, and they'll play each other for the championship. I mean, I thought we went through all this before, Anyway, it's one of those things that in the end, what is really a white university? This thing about is impact males overall. College campuses are dominated by females, and 40% of the people who go to colleges are men. And of those, probably less than 50% are white. So what do you mean by white universities? You're talking about the people in charge? Okay. Maybe you should say that's something they should look forward to. Say, I want to see more people of color at these positions. But I'll tell you this. I don't think there's any reputable college that don't have all the people on staff are not at least at the same quota of people in the country. If there are 13% of black people in the United States, which they have been for a long time, I would imagine that most places are either at the same level of 30% or they're well over. They're overrepresented. So this idea that there's no people of color anywhere, it's not how it is anymore. It could have been, it wasn't that way before, but we were 90% white 50 years ago. So things have changed quite a bit. We're 62% white now. That's a lot. So when people who are quote unquote who are advocating for white people, because nobody else can do it, we have to do it for ourselves. Now we're still in power, so they say that we don't need it. But then you see what the Democrats are talking about, and still want to say the same bogeyman is the same people. It's white people or corporations. So here I'm a guy that we all know that this Jamel Harris is a feminist, and she's not a radical feminist. She is an intersexual feminist. She believes that when black players go to quote unquote white universities, that there is a master and a slave mentality going on there, and that's wrong for them. And they say the same thing about women trying to get some sort of diplomas or whatever is to go in STEM, when most women don't want to do in those things. And so all this money sits there. The government's put so much money out there for that, and women don't take that money to go in those STEM fields. They think that's wrong, that we have to force women to do this. And we want to tell that settled law has happened, that segregation is no longer there, but we want to now segregate our colleges with through athletics. You really want to do this? That might actually wake up more white kids, and they might say, you know what, I'll just go to this university, which is only going to be a white university, and I'll have a chance to perform here, and then we'll see really how much better you are. Now, I've said it before, on average, because how they're, and this is what Jimmy DeGreek got in trouble for, but he's right. On average, based on the type of sports that we're playing, they have their muscles are more geared to that type of stuff. And you've seen what's happening in college football. It's because they have so many black players, and so many at the high school level are black players. So when ESPN talks about the year of the black quarterback, well, it started back in high school, and now it's in college. And now the NFL has to change their game because what they're getting from college, which is their feeder system, is the same type of players, that Kyler Murray, that type of stuff. So the game in the NFL has changed as well. You're not going to see the 6'5" white guy who can't move in the pocket anymore. You'll still have some of them, but they're getting other guys to come in. There's no way that Kyler Murray should be number one. There's no way really that Baker Mayfield should be number one. But the game has changed so much at the college level. These are the guys that are playing quarterback. So anyway, so my issue is here. I can make it racial. I could sit there and say the reason why Florida State lost against Boise State is because their IQ is so fucking low that they can't just do stupid plays because clearly they're better than they are. But I don't believe that's to say. I think that on average, that black young men probably have higher athletic ability to play football. And I can say on average that white Americans, European Americans, have a higher IQ. I don't know what that means, but I'm just saying that's what it is. But you can't, when you're talking about football, you're talking about sport, and you're talking about quote unquote the best team game, it doesn't matter what color you are. And I would definitely take the teams that were at least mixed or guys in the 80s are almost 80% white and still are considered one of the greatest teams of all time and play teams right now. I think that what happened to Boise State is that Florida State basically folded. They got manhandled so much in that game, especially on the defense, but mentally they failed. So should I say something like that? Florida State should be given all the credit to Boise State. They flew across the country. They were supposed to play in Jacksonville because of Dorian. They moved the team to Doak to play that game. They were up on them easy, and then that team never panicked, and they came back and beat them. And at the end of the game, they were clearly the better team. It was worrying to be a Florida State fan, a team that's still recruiting in the top 10 every year, that they're getting beat by teams like Boise State. Now again, Boise State is not, it's not like Florida A&M. Okay, it's a team that's decent that can beat anybody. But the question is this a proof that you don't necessarily have? I mean, it doesn't really matter what color you look like when it comes to playing college football. I think it is, and I think that I'm hopeful that a lot of people are seeing those type of games and say, you know what, when they're 6 or 7 years old and they watch that and say, I want to play football. And selfishly, I'm going to say I hope that a lot of white young boys want to play. You can't continually just push it, because right now they have become so narrow when it comes to the NFL, because the NFL is basically do SJW stuff for black people as well. And then if you're a white guy in the locker room, are you going to say something against that? No. And it's just going to continually be that way. At some point, the game is going to be the black NFL. It's the NBA, the black NBA is already that way. And at some point, even though we're going to be in minority in this country, that's a lot of people that are not going to be watching the game. So is the NFL something that can it be destroyed in some way? Can there be some other people for us to look at? I mean, I hate to say how I felt. I mean, but sitting there watching that, it was like I was watching BET.